It arrived without a postmark, without a return address, a blank VHS tape, sitting innocuously on a doorstep, in a mailbox, or sometimes left on the seat of an unlocked car. No one ever saw who delivered it. No one could explain its sudden, silent appearance. The cassette itself was unremarkable. Black plastic, no label. The spools holding a length of magnetic ribbon that seemed to hum with a strange, latent energy. Most who found it were driven by a simple, almost primal curiosity. In an age of digital streams and cloud storage, the analog relic was an anomaly, a mystery begging to be solved. They would slide it into the dusty VCRs resurrected from attics and basements. The machine worried to life with a mechanical sigh. And then they would watch. The screen would flicker awash in a sea of static, before resolving into a series of disjointed, nightmarish images. A blinding circle of light, a woman brushing her hair in a tarnished mirror, her face contorted in a silent scream. A ladder, standing alone against a desolate sky. Writhing maggots, a horse drowning in a churning sea. A single, unblinking eye, staring out from the chaos. The sequence was short, lasting less than 2 minutes, and utterly devoid of context or narrative. It was a visual assault, a collage of dread that seemed to bypass the conscious mind and implant itself directly into the viewer's deepest fears. When the tape ended, returning the screen to a blanket of hissing static, a profound and unsettling silence would fill the room. A silence that felt heavy, watchful, a silence that was merely the prelude to the true horror that was about to unfold. The origin of the tape remains a ghost, a question mark hanging over a string of inexplicable tragedies. Some paranormal researchers have theorized it is not a physical object in the conventional sense, but a psychic projection, a tulpa given form and function through an intense act of will and suffering. Others whisper of a vengeful spirit, a soul so wronged in life that its rage has been imprinted onto the magnetic tape, creating a vessel for its unending malevolence. Whatever its source, its purpose was becoming terrifyingly clear. It was a messenger, a harbinger, and its appearance was always the beginning of the end. The screen would go black, the VCR would click, the tape automatically ejecting with a soft thud. And in that moment of returning quiet, the phone would ring. Its shrill, piercing cry would shatter the stillness, a sound so sudden and so violent it felt like a physical blow. The caller ID would be blank, blocked, unknown. Every single time, driven by a lingering sense of unease from the video, or perhaps a desperate need for a human connection to ground them back in reality. The viewer would answer. They would lift the receiver, their hand trembling slightly, and press it to their ear. At first, it would be nothing but the faint, ethereal crackle of an open line, a sound like distant, frying static. It was the same sound that had filled the moments between the disturbing images on the tape, a sound that was now intimately, terrifyingly familiar. They would say hello, their voice small, swallowed by the oppressive silence. And then, a voice would emerge from the static, a whisper, dry and raspy, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was a child's voice, yet ancient and filled with a chilling, hollow resonance. Sometimes it was faint, barely audible. Other times, it was as if the speaker was standing right behind them, their cold breath on the back of their neck. The message was always the same, delivered in a flat, emotionless tone that belied its horrifying content. 7 days. Just 2 words. Then, the line would go dead. A dial tone would drone, monotonous and final. The call was over, but its echo would remain, crawling under their skin and taking root in their minds. In the hours and days that followed, the world would begin to warp. The images from the tape would bleed into their reality. They would see a fleeting glimpse of a blinding circle of light in the reflection of a shop window. The face of a loved one would momentarily distort into the silent, screaming visage of the woman in the mirror. They would catch themselves staring at their own reflection, their face subtly, horrifyingly wrong. The phone would ring at odd hours, but when they answered, there was only the mocking hum of the dial tone. They were marked, haunted, not by a ghost in a house, but by a curse that lived inside their own heads. counting down the seconds of their lives with every beat of their terrified hearts. The final day always dawned with a strange, oppressive calm. The haunting visions would recede. The phantom phone calls would cease. For a fleeting, hopeful moment, the victims would allow themselves to believe it was over, that it was all a product of a stressed mind, a waking nightmare from which they had finally, mercifully awoken. They would go about their day, a fragile sense of normalcy returning. But it was a lie, a cruel trick. The curse was simply gathering its strength for the final, terrible act. As the sun began to set on the seventh day, a creeping dread would return, colder and more absolute than before. A television in the room would switch on by itself, even if it was unplugged. The screen would flare to life, not with a broadcast channel, but with that familiar, sickening sea of static. And from the static, an image would slowly resolve. It was a well, old stone, covered in moss, sitting in a dark, forgotten clearing. The image would hold for a long, agonizing moment. Then, something would begin to crawl from it. A figure, drenched and skeletal, with long, black hair plastered over its face, obscuring its features. It moved with a twitching, unnatural gait, like a broken marionette, pulling its dripping, emaciated body out of the well and onto the ground. The figure on the screen would begin to crawl, slowly, inexorably, towards the viewer. The static would grow louder, the image warping and stretching. And then, the impossible would happen. The figure would crawl right out of the television screen. It would spill onto the floor of the room, bringing with it the scent of stagnant water and the grave. In that final, horrific moment, the victim would see the face beneath the veil of wet, black hair. A face pale and bloated, with eyes that burned with an ancient, unforgiving hatred. Their last breath would be a scream that no one else would ever hear. When their body was found, their face would be frozen in an expression of ultimate terror, a silent testament to the unspeakable horror they witnessed in their final seconds. The cause of death, according to the coroner's report, would always be the same: heart failure, a medical explanation for a supernatural execution. In the aftermath of the discovery, a strange and confounding detail would emerge during the police investigation. The tape, the catalyst for the entire horrifying ordeal, would be gone. It was never found among the victim's possessions. It was never logged into evidence. It was as if it had simply ceased to exist. Investigators would search the home, turning over every drawer, checking every dusty box in the attic, but the black, unlabeled VHS cassette was nowhere to be found. It had vanished, taking with it the only tangible proof of the curse. Friends and family would mention the strange video, the disturbing phone call, the victim's spiraling paranoia in the days leading up to their death. But without the tape, their stories were dismissed as grief-induced delusion, attempts to make sense of a senseless tragedy. There was no weapon, no perpetrator, only a body with a look of pure fear etched onto its face, and a story that belonged more to folklore than to a police file. But the tape was not destroyed. It had merely moved on. Sometime after the death of its latest victim, it would reappear, on a different doorstep, in a different city, waiting for a new, unsuspecting person to find it. The cycle would begin again. The curse, insatiable and relentless, would continue its hunt, passed from one life to the next, like a plague. Its disappearance after each death was a crucial part of its design, ensuring its continued propagation. It leaves behind no evidence, only whispers and warnings that are never believed until it is far too late. It is a ghost in the machine, a malevolent echo trapped on a magnetic ribbon, forever seeking a new audience, a new screen to crawl through, and a new life to claim in 7 days.